In one neighborhood can be traced back to a single game. What police are doing to track down the players now.
And a little girl is saved from the subway tracks in New York. Learn how she ended up under the train. But first, meteorologist John Gum has your first forecast.
Tonight, we are looking at one of the coolest nights that we've seen so far in September. Although that's not saying much considering how warm it's been. 68 right now, clear skies, a breeze in out of the northwest, and that is bringing in less humid and cooler air tonight. We'll fall through the 60s, and when you wake up in the morning, we're talking low 50s in a lot of spots with clear skies. This doesn't last, though. I'll show you when 90s roll back in here. Coming up in your Weather Authority forecast in 16 minutes. The news starts now.
Breaking news alerts, tonight's top stories, and weather before the first commercial. This is Local 12 News on Star 64.
Good evening, I'm Paula Toti.
And I'm Kyle Linsky. This video you see behind me right there is of a man setting a car on fire near Grant Park. It's the latest in a string of early morning crimes in that neighborhood. And neighbors say it's connected to late night dice games.
Now they are asking for city officials to crack down on crime while police increase patrols. Our Walter Smith Randolph is here with how these crimes are unfolding. Walter.
Paula and Kyle, neighbors along that stretch of McMicken Avenue and OvertheRhine are pleading for help. They say these dice games are causing a lot of problems, including that car arson that unfolded Saturday morning. Walnut and McMicken, Saturday morning at 6:05. This man in the white tee douses a Honda Pilot with accelerant and lights a fire, casually walking away. John Donaldson says it's par for the course for this section of OvertheRhine.
It's just crazy. I mean, but this is what we have to live with north of Liberty. 3
people were murdered here this summer. Jerome Young was killed on Back Street in June. 3 days later, 14-year-old Anthony Hinton was gunned down just a few feet away. And in August, James Hazel was murdered across the park at Lang and McMicken.
Just right over here at the corner of McMicken and Walnut, 6 weeks ago, we had a woman dice game going on there, went wrong, and a woman came back with a car and drove up and down the sidewalk.
The woman behind the wheel, Chantal Heath, is now under arrest.
Several of the shootings down here take place because of dice games going wrong, people cheating and losing their money and wanting it back. These dice games are a major problem for this area.
Donaldson now wants City Council to craft an ordinance cracking down on loitering.
You know, the dice games, and the loitering, so they go hand in hand because they'll put the dice in their pockets and pretend like they're just standing there. So there needs to be something to be able to break up that loitering and just get people moved along and out of the area.
Cincinnati police say they have increased patrols and undercover surveillance, but Donaldson believes only an act of City Council will ensure this doesn't happen again.
I haven't gotten any response from City Council. They don't seem to be that interested in anything that occurs north of Liberty.
Now, we should mention we blurred out the man's face in that video because this incident is still under investigation. We also reached out to City Council members. If and when they come up with a plan, we'll let you know. Paula and Kyle.
All right, thank you, Walter. And if you have information about these crimes, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers. You could receive cash for your anonymous tips.
The man who shot and killed Claremont County Sheriff's Deputy Bill Brewer will die in prison. Wynn pleaded guilty to Brewer's murder today and the attempted murder of 7 other officers. As Anjanette Levy tells us now, the plea takes the death penalty off the table in this case.
Wynn wore street clothes today for the last time in his life. The 24-year-old changed his plea to guilty in the aggravated murder of Deputy Bill Brewer and the attempted murders of 7 others, including Lieutenant Nick DeRose.
Do you understand, Mr. Wynn, that upon entering this plea, if I impose the jointly recommended sentence, you will never be released from prison?
Yes, Your Honor.
Wynn is currently taking medications used to treat bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. But that night last February, he had taken several illegal drugs, which prohibited him from being able to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. Wynn called 911 to report someone was trying to get into his apartment. Then he fired shots, leading to an hours-long standoff. Prosecutors said that Wynn feigned suicide, prompting Brewer and DeRose to go into the building to help him.
Once inside the apartment, they were ambushed by the defendant who had not attempted to commit suicide. The defendant fired upon Deputy William Brewer, Lieutenant Dominic DeRose, Deputy Daniel Spears, Deputy Michael Ross, Detective Nicholas Crouch, and Deputy Douglas Scott.
2 rounds hit and killed Brewer, and DeRose was wounded.
There is nothing that mitigates the defendant's conduct in this case. With no explanation why Mr. Wynn chose to murder 1 police officer and tried to murder 6 others, I have no reason to believe he wouldn't do it again if given the chance.
Wynn's family sat behind him as he changed his plea. Brewer's widow, Jamie, who's left to raise a young son by herself, did not speak.
To spare Bill's family and my office the pain and suffering of sitting through a graphic trial and years of appeals that would certainly come, I feel this was the best choice.
The plea means some healing from this painful ordeal can begin.
Our heart goes out to Jamie. The rest of the officers involved in this case.
In Claremont County, Anjanette Levy, Local 12 News.
And Judge Anthony Brock also sentenced Wynn to an additional 115 years in prison. Well, community comes together to remember a woman who was murdered 20 years ago today. Candles were lit, balloons were launched, and prayers were said tonight in memory of Linna Ranford. She was strangled and her body left in a Bond Hill alley back in 1999. Organizers wanted to honor Linna and raise awareness for unsolved homicide cases. Now, if you know anything about the murder of this woman, you're asked to please call Crime Stoppers. That number is 352-3040. We now know the name of a man whose body was found in Winton Woods. 34-year-old Tony Aday was found yesterday near Great Oaks Trail. He'd been missing since last Monday. Police don't know just yet how he died and say there were no signs of injury to his body.
Homes in Fairview are being torn down after a 4-alarm fire causes one building to collapse right before firefighters' eyes. The fire started in a home on Addison Street early this morning and spread to 4 other buildings. One woman in a wheelchair was rescued by firefighters. The Red Cross is helping residents who are now without their homes. And 3 people are recovering after fire rips through their Clarksville home. The Clinton-Warren Joint Fire District got the call around 6:30 this morning and fought the flames for 6 hours. 5 other departments helped out. Those hurt suffered injuries ranging from serious to non-life-threatening. The Red Cross is helping the family involved.
This next story is really unbelievable. Commuters in New York witnessed a horrific scene today. A 45-year-old man jumped in front of a moving subway train while holding his 5-year-old daughter. I can't even imagine
I
this.
know. Nick Calloway reports that the man was killed, but the little girl, she is expected to be okay.
The man that I saw jump in had a little girl in his wrists and in his arms. Next thing I know, he and her jumped.
Cell phone video shows Good Samaritans pulling the little girl from under the subway train just after 8 a.m. Others on the platform comforted the youngster who just barely escaped with her life. Witnesses could only watch as the 45-year-old father grabbed his 5-year-old daughter and jumped in front of the southbound 4 train. Witnesses say the train slowed down but couldn't stop in time, running over the man and the little girl.
There was a man who, in heroic efforts, went down in the front of the tracks to see if the little girl was okay, and he got her out, brought her up to us, and thank God above.
The girl suffered only minor injuries while her father was killed. The incident leaving commuters traumatized and searching for answers.
I'm a mom, and this devastated me like crazy. I watched it firsthand, and I am absolutely just so thankful that she's all right.
Oh, we're told the little girl's mother met up with the child at the hospital. Police say they are still unclear why the man jumped.
Your heart just goes out to that family right now.
I just can't imagine.
Well, coming up, if you're looking for a new career, the day and the month that you should ramp up your search.
And learn why some forms of technology may be eavesdropping on your conversations. When you know when employers are most likely to post their openings. Unfortunately, Allworth's Amy Wagner has that information in tonight's Simply Money.
Well, job hunting can be a very stressful process, but having the inside track on when to apply could help. And that time is coming up soon for many companies. According to data just released from career site LinkedIn, October is the biggest month of the year in terms of number of jobs posted. Nearly half of hiring managers say they hire in October because it's a busy time of year for their business, and they want to get new hires in and trained before the end of the year. LinkedIn's data also shows Monday is the single day of the week when most new jobs are posted. And if you spot a promising listing, don't wait to apply. Previous research shows being among the first 25 applicants boosts your chances of being hired. Also, in this LinkedIn survey, more than 90% of hiring managers say showing up late to an interview likely means you won't get hired. Other big turnoffs: whining during the interview, not being prepared for questions, and bad-mouthing your current boss. So what are the most common job interview questions? Well, we've got a list and advice for how to answer on the Simply Money page on local12.com. For Local 12 and Allworth, I'm Mimi Wagner.
Your assistant is listening to everything you say. Well, your Google Assistant anyway. Google decided to once again hire contractors to listen and transcribe some users' voice commands. The tech company suspended its program this summer after hundreds of recordings were leaked to the media. Google says the information helps to fine-tune its artificial intelligence system called Assistant. Going forward, Google users will be required to agree to voice transcription with the understanding that contractors may be listening to their commands. President Trump faces more pressure over his conversation with the president of Ukraine. That's the subject of a whistleblower complaint. Now, he denies that he tried to withhold funding for Ukraine unless it agreed to investigate the son of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. The president claims that Biden abused his position to help his son, who worked for a Ukrainian gas company. Biden, as well as many GOP lawmakers, say that the president should release the contents of the complaint.
A United Nations report on the effects of global warming on the world's oceans and frozen areas is worse than expected. Some of the consequences include more destructive storms, rising sea levels that are displacing millions from coastal areas, and reduced supplies of drinking water. World leaders are meeting at the UN for a special climate summit to try to come up with plans to stop the rising global temperatures. Delta Airlines says it is going green. The company plans to invest $2 million in a study of a biofuel facility that uses wood residue from forest floors to make sustainable aviation fuel. The study should be completed by the middle of 2020, and the first batch of biofuel is scheduled for the end of 2023. Jet fuel, of course, one of the biggest costs for airlines. The biggest blackout in North American history happened not far from us in Cleveland when overgrown trees grew too close to a high voltage power line. That was 16 years ago.
And since then, power companies have trimmed and sprayed vegetation to keep them away from the lines. And tonight, Dwayne Pullman shows us that's become a problem for a man left with dozens of dead trees now.
Tom Wolf, a lieutenant with the Montgomery Fire Department, took us for a ride through a section of the 70 acres he owns near Batesville, Indiana.
Going over this way here.
To get a good look.
All right, you can see it right here.
At these power lines that cut through his property.
Lines run all the way through my land here.
And dozens of dead trees below.
Tree here, tree here, tree here. And does it go all the way down? All the way down.
The trees were killed when a contractor hired by the local power company came in and sprayed herbicides.
You got 40 trees.
Yeah. So that are either dead or they're in the dying process.
Okay. While Wolf understands the power company has the right to keep the lines clear of vegetation, he doesn't think that includes killing his trees. So he came to me with a question.
Dwayne, is that right?
Power companies are given access through easements, and they do have the right to cut or spray any vegetation within a utility protection zone of several feet around those electric lines in the air.
I understand that.
But Wolf's trees aren't in that zone, and now they're dead or dying.
They obviously made a mistake.
And for that mistake, Wolf wants to be paid. A resolution manager for the contractor offered to settle the case by removing the dead trees and paying Wolf $16,927. But Wolf says he deserves much more.
So you want 60 grand? Around, yeah, exactly.
Whatever the outcome, Wolf is entitled to something. The power company and its contractors are allowed to trim and spray, but they are not allowed to kill all those trees, which means Tom Wolf is right. I'm Dwayne Pullman.
Now, we do want to note here that we did call the power company for more information and for an update on this situation. A representative told us that the company, quote, had no comment.
All right, it was a beautiful evening.
Yeah, it was. And you know what? 3 things people have been asking for. Cooler weather, got that tonight. A little bit of rain, we got that earlier today. Yeah. And Kyle Linsky. They've been demanding those 3 things, and we got it all.
I was trying to think what the third thing was going to be. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you, too. We really miss you. We're happy you're back.
Thank you.
Let's roll on with the weather, folks, because we actually had 20 straight days of dry weather until today. 12/100ths of an inch today, officially at the airport. Now, some places saw a little more, some places saw less. Many of you saw no rain at all today, but officially that breaks our streak of 20 straight days with no rain. Longest stretch in 25 years. You got to go back to June of '94 when we had 21. We also hit a high of 85 today, 10 degrees above normal. 10 degrees also below the record pace, and that temperature is going to stay above normal, it looks like, the next several days. We're not seeing any break from that. 19 days in September now above normal. We'll add to that only 4 below normal. But a cold front has moved through tonight, and behind that front we have drier air moving into the Cincinnati area. Not only drier air, but cooler air also will arrive tonight with temperatures a little closer to average for this time of the year. 68, winds north-northwest at 7, and that dew point down in the refreshing category tonight. It didn't start that way, though, this morning. That dew point was in the upper 60s, a lot of humidity in the air, but then as the front came through, look at that. We have scoured that humidity out with those dew point readings in the low 50s, and on nights like this, the temperature tries to go down to the dew point. So by tomorrow morning, we're in the low 50s. That'll make it one of the coolest nights we have seen so far in September. And then highs tomorrow will be back into the upper 70s. That is a little bit above normal still for this time of the year, but a lot closer to normal. So if you go into the Reds game tomorrow night against the Brewers, looks awesome. First pitch 73 down into the mid 60s by the final out tomorrow night. Now, if you think the cool weather is going to stick around, think again, because tomorrow will be the only day that's pretty close to average. From there, we head up once again, and we have more 90s in our future as another big ridge of high pressure builds back over the eastern part of the country, including here in the Ohio Valley. So by the weekend, 15 to 20 degrees above average. That is going to put our highs back in the 90s, and going through the first week of October, it looks like a slam dunk around here for more above average temperatures. That may last even into October. The trend for October is for temperatures to tilt toward that above average level as well. So it looks like for the most part, temperatures are really going to be warmer than average. Now we got one weather maker coming in. This one is in here as we go into Thursday morning. That brings a chance for some showers into the forecast. Not much rain though. This is not going to be a drought busting rain. That front brings slightly cooler, slightly drier air briefly before things really heat up again going into the weekend. Of course, the Weather Authority app, the place where you can find all of this forecast information. And over the next 7 days, it looks like this: 79 pleasant tomorrow, into the 80s on Wednesday, with lows the next couple of nights in the 50s. And then there's your morning shower chance Thursday. Otherwise, the heat is on. Friday and into the weekend and early next week, upper 80s to low 90s around here as things get hot once again. Stay right there. We've got a look at sports coming up after the break.
Report, sponsored by Joseph Chevrolet.
Well, it's back to the drawing board for the Bengals as they head into week 4 of the NFL season. The good news is they got 13 more games to figure this whole thing out. But starting the season at 0-3, not exactly how rookie head coach Zach Taylor foresaw this season going. But despite how it's gone, Taylor's still bringing that energy and a positive attitude that they're going to turn this thing around.
There's no increased sense of urgency. I wouldn't say that, because there's so much urgency in this building. There's so much still excitement amongst the players and the coaching staff. And I mean, I really can't tell you. I came in to work fired up. We're playing Pittsburgh Monday Night Football. We got a chance to get this thing headed in the right direction. We're 0-3. It's not the way we wanted to start, but we do see positive things happening that we can continue to build on.
He's fired up. We're all fired up for Monday Night Football next week. But for more on today's press conferences and everything the Bengals are, go on to our website, local12.com, and read our exclusive content from beat reporter Richard Skinner. I caught up with Skinny Man today to talk about the Bengals and where they are right now. Skinny, another week. And here we are again talking about a close Bengals loss, 0-3 to start the season. So we're going to play a little point-counterpoint. I'm going to give you an overreaction after 3 weeks of the season. You tell me if it's founded or if it's an overreaction. So here we go. 0-3 to start the season. The honeymoon with Zach Taylor is over.
I think it was over at halftime of last week. I really do. I mean, fans are craving something different. It felt like you got that in week 1. Week 2 felt a lot like last year. Week 3 brings you back a little bit of optimism and hope because they were resilient. They did find a way to bounce back.
Is it time to move on from Andy Dalton?
No, and I don't think you'll get to a point of that, Chris, until you get maybe week 12, week 13, and things have gone completely sideways.
Is the season a wash? Is it a rebuild now?
No, I think it was that way all along. I mean, I think the playoffs were and are a pipe dream. This always felt like at best a 6-7 win team, and if things went right, maybe an 8 or 9 win team. Maybe that 9 gets you there, but you got to get that first one because it feels like it's been a long time since this team is won football games in a row, and it has been a long time.
Bengals still searching for their first win. It doesn't get any easier as they hit the road on Pittsburgh on Monday night. And it's never too early to start thinking about the weekend, right? Well, last Friday night, we had the best yet for high school football around the area. We saw the big hits, the big plays, and upsets all over the place. Here are our best plays in this week's Friday Flashback. Well, the Reds are off tonight, and before they open their final homestand, a 3-game series with the Milwaukee Brewers, it's the last time we're going to hear the dulcet tones of legendary broadcaster Marty Bremen. 46 years calling Reds baseball, and it all comes down to this week. So no playoffs, unfortunately, for the Reds, but still plenty to watch and listen to, obviously, with Marty. Eugenio Suarez is the big-ticket attraction for these final 6 games. Suarez only 2 home runs behind Pete Alonso with the Mets for the National League lead, and he's 4 behind George Foster's club record of 52 home runs. Well, that's going to do it for sports. Don't go anywhere. News continues after the break.
I mean, it will really feel like fall. Average temperatures in the low 50s, something we haven't seen in a while. That would make it a tie for the coolest start to a September day that we've seen so far. Upper 70s tomorrow afternoon. That's a little above normal tomorrow.
Okay, well, we're not ready to take out the gloves. This is nice.
It's going to be a while for that, trust me.
All right, we'll have more news at 11 over on Local 12.
There you go. Have a great night. Sleep well.
Welcome back.